Robbie, is Coach on hold? All right, cool. Let's go out to the guest line, and we'll talk to former Heat head coach, former Heat assistant coach, the best basketball analyst in the business. One of my favorites, Ron Rothstein, joins us on the guest line. Coach, thanks for the time. Really appreciate it this morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good.
Doing good. It's tough times right now, Coach, with what's going on with the team. How do you think Spo's experiencing all of this? You know, I feel like he's putting up such a good front because he's dealing with so many unknowns. You don't know who's going to be available from night to night. And, you know, people are always just going to go and look at your record and what it is, but these are unprecedented circumstances. So how do you think he's dealing with all of this right now with what the team's going through?
He's probably dealing with it as well as anybody could. He's got Spo has great equilibrium about him, and that's part of what's made him such a great coach. I can tell you he's dealing with it better than I would. That's for sure.
How did you handle losing streaks? What was your process?
Not well. That was ugly.
From everything that he's going through right now, is the toughest thing trying to rely on young guys who aren't very, like Bam mentioned last night, there's not a lot of guys in that locker room who even have that much NBA experience, and you're turning to them to try and get you out of a funk. Is that, you think, the toughest thing he's going through right now, or the team?
Well, that's hard. That's a very, very difficult thing to do in sports, professional, college, unless you get some really special guys. But when you're dealing with young players, inexperienced players, and you're dealing with many of them at the same time, it's really hard. It's hard to win. This is a tough league. And, go around the league and look what happens when teams lose one or two guys and what happens to their team. We've had multiple people out for ever. It seems like this year. I mean, we just basically been snake bit. You know, you talk about Jimmy. Okay, that's a good. Jimmy's played 6 games this year.
Yeah,
and two of them he played hurt. So we haven't seen the Jimmy Butler, who is an All-Pro, an All-Star. We missed Tyler for 7 games. If you watch the game last night, you could see what a difference it makes having him back because of his ability to create stuff off the dribble and make plays for himself. The interesting thing about Tyler last night, and I mentioned this on the rewind, on the post game, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, when the team broke the huddle and walked out onto the floor, you know how sometimes when you get away from your coach and the players just rally together?
Yeah.
Okay. So they have that, like that secondary huddle.
Yep.
And I'm watching it, and the only one talking in there was Tyler. He was on the court with Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Precious Achiuwa. Who am I missing? One other young guy. He was the youngest of the young, and he was the one that he was animatedly talking to them about, basically, without knowing exactly what he said, but just reading into it. Hey, this is not done. Let's go.
Right.
You know, and he gave that group life. And I thought that showed tremendous leadership. That was great.
I thought
and
that
then
was
cool. Called back into the game, you know.
Yeah, I thought that was cool too. And then I think it's also got to be tough for Bam, because Bam mentioned some of that yesterday after the game too, where he's looking around the locker room and he says, you know, maybe we have 2 guys with more than 3 years experience. And he's also like getting pushed into the more, you know, they talked about pushing him into the vocal leadership role on top of, you know, they're expecting a lot more production from him and him making these leaps. And so I imagine it's got to be tough for him where he's taken on, you know, going shot for shot with Kevin Durant one night, but he also feels like he wants to keep the young guys involved and feels like he's got to put up a big front. Like, it's a lot to put on a 23-year-old when he doesn't have Jimmy Butler there by his side like he did last year. It's got to be a pretty big mental wear on him.
There's a very heavy weight on his shoulders and his mind. There's no question about it. The thing you have to understand is that by nature, he's not a go-to scorer, but he's becoming that. But that takes time for that mental focus to kick in and be there every night. This is not natural. This is a learned response for him, and that takes time. And he's feeling that way. There are times I'm watching. He's trying to facilitate, and he's trying to be the point guard. He's our center, and he's an undersized center as it is. So he's got to put forth a great amount of energy and effort to compete with guys that night in and night out are 2, 3, and 4 inches bigger than him. In reality, Bam's only 6'9", but he's such a tough kid. He's so athletic and he's so strong. Look, he can hold his ground and many nights win that battle. But to try and do it alone or without 3 or 4 of your other main pieces, that's a little too much. You know, I'll give you another example of what we're dealing with. You know, we signed Mo Harkless to fit that spot where Jay Crowder played so well. And Mo came in and he really struggled. He was really struggling. So Spo took him out of the starting lineup and he sat him down for a couple of games, and then he started bringing him back off the bench. And he started to play well. Not that he was putting up big numbers, but he was doing all the little things, which that spot needs. And then he started to make a couple of threes. His defense was picking up. He had some really key defensive stops and a couple of our wins. And then what happens? He gets hurt. So Myers Leonard's been out forever. You know, another big body you can throw in there, and, you know, against the big bodies and give you 15 to 20 minutes a night of pretty good basketball. All those things add up. And we're underwater right now. We're treading water, trying to keep our head above ground. And we will. And this group will come back, and Spo will lead them back. But you're not coming back until your main guys are on the floor. That's just the reality of the NBA.
Ron, that was my question, is that, you know, before the season started, with it only being 72 games, everybody said it'll take about 20 games to kind of get into a groove or whatever. And you've had all these injuries, all these guys in and out. You've played, you know, there's guys that would play 10 to 15 minutes, playing 30 minutes. When everybody does finally get back, how many games is it going to take to kind of get into a flow of who they are, who's going to get what minutes, who's going to do what on the floor? Because you're at 20 games now. You only have 52 left.
Well, it's a good question, and I'm not sure I have the answer or anybody has the answer. It sort of has to happen organically. You can't put a time limit on it. You know, when you try and force things is when you really make things worse. You know, it's like if you have a really good player and he's been out the whole year. I'm not talking about a Kevin Durant or a LeBron James. I'm talking about a really good player on your team. I'll give you an example. Go back to the first year of the Big Three, and we lost Udonis early in the season for almost the whole season. And Udonis was a big part of us, you know, both not only on the floor, but spiritually, mentally. You know, he just such a tough guy. And he got healthy, and near the end of the year, we tried to bring him back, and we brought him back too soon. And I remember starting him. We started him in a game in Boston, and I felt sorry. I felt sad for him. It was embarrassing. He wasn't ready. And sometimes, you know, they say you don't lose your job because of an injury. Well, sometimes you have to work your way back, you know, little by little. And it has to happen, like I say, organically. And then what happened was Spo took him out of the starting lineup because he realized, you know, he wasn't ready for that. And we're using him a little bit here, a little bit there. And then we get into I think it was the second round. We played the Bulls. And that was the year Derrick Rose was MVP.
Yeah, the game two, the big
first game in Chicago. We got to beat the first game in Chicago. In the second game, we were getting pounded. And UD came in. The whole thing changed. And we won 4 straight. So there's no I've seen it happen time and time again, Leroy. There's no time limit. There's no definitive date that you can set. You just got to go to work and things have to happen. And you read it as it goes along. The good thing about the NBA is even this year, there's going to be 9 in the playoffs because you're going to have a play-in to 8 and 9, or maybe even 7 and 10 a play-in. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure of that. But I do know there's going to be more than 8. And all you need is your chance to get into the playoffs. If you're playing your best basketball at the end of the year, just like we did last year, that's what's most important.
Before we get you out of here, Ron, and we're talking to Ron Rothstein, who you guys can catch on Fox Sports Sun, Ron's Rewind every halftime and post game. You got Heat and Kings tomorrow, 8 o'clock tip-off, 7:30 pregame. Before we get you out of here, one positive that I have really been enjoying night in and night out has been watching Precious Achiuwa. He brings like nonstop energy, the 15, 16 minutes he's given every single night. Do you, first of all, what have you made of his rookie season? And do you think that maybe he's ready for a little bit more? Because it just feels like every time he's on the court, good things are happening.
As you're mentioning his name, I'm sitting here shaking my head. Yes, I totally agree with you. I think he's having a terrific rookie season. I really like him. I think he's got big upside. I don't know the kid personally. We haven't been able to be around the players and everything else. But everything I've heard is that he fits the Heat culture. He's one of us. He works really hard. He has some really good innate skills. I think he's got really good hands. He catches the ball and finishes well around the basket. He makes tough shots in traffic around the basket. And that's a knack. He sets very good screens. And he's just constant energy. And the answer to your question about more minutes is a definitive maybe.
That sounds like this season.
But look, Leroy, unless you're there every day,
right,
which I'm not, you don't know. You're speculating. Could he handle more minutes? If you ask him, he'd probably say, I can play 48. Give me 48 and 48 shots. That's what every player wants. Okay, that's great. But could he handle more minutes? Very possibly. And it could be coming. But sometimes, what like shelf life is? Okay? Something has a shelf life. Well, there are many players that have certain limitations, and you will increase their minutes and you get diminishing returns. He may not be ready for it just yet. But time will tell. And I guarantee you, nobody knows better than Spo and his staff. Trust me on that.
Check out Ron tomorrow. Heat and Kings on the broadcast. Always does a fantastic job. We always appreciate when you give us time, Coach. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ron.
Always good to talk to you, and please stay safe, be well.
You too.
Absolutely. All right, we'll wrap things up on a Friday. We're back right after this.